keep them from maybe going out and doing other crimes, but unfortunately the jails are being overcrowded. They're being stuffed with people that are in inhumane conditions, and all that is very depressing for a civilized society that we're supposed to have in this country. The police are also cracking down. In 2008, the most current year for statistics, 78,000 marijuana arrests were made statewide. 78,000 people were given tickets. They call it arrest ticket. Even if you get a ticket, that's considered an arrest. If you have less than an ounce, you don't go to jail. If you have identification, you simply give them your ID, they give you a parking, they give you a ticket, you gotta go to court. The maximum fine is $100 plus penalty assessment. But that's considered an arrest. But nevertheless, can you imagine 78,000 cops had to stop, take 2 hours, and when they took it, they got to go to court, take up court time, jail time in some cases, transportation, people back and forth. Cops got to come and testify. The cook's got to be hired. Can you imagine what it's costing us over this ridiculous law that really has not been effective? Anyway, so that's the whole story. Not entirely, obviously, but that touches on some of the things that I want to bring to your attention and inform you about. And again, I'm not here to promote marijuana. I'm here to promote rational laws involving marijuana, although yes, on a personal level, I think it's a good medicine for openers. And beyond that, we can discuss that in private. But the point is that the laws are irrational, and even though I'm very concerned about the increased penalties with this tax and regulate initiative, I think I'm balanced to legalize herb and move in that direction is the way to go, and I'm encouraging people to vote, to get out to vote in November, and see if we can begin to get rational when we're dealing with this benign, mislabeled substance, marijuana. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do some question and answer.
I'm sure anything you want.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that, like, in the new law, I don't know a whole lot about the new law, the provisions of the new law, but that there would be guidelines regarding driving under the influence. And
It's not going to affect it at all. Matter of fact, they cannot authorize driving under the influence. It says you can't drive, and right now you can drive under the influence of marijuana.
you can't.
But you can't be impaired. You understand? Impairment means you're unable to operate a motor vehicle safely. Under the influence doesn't necessarily mean that. You think I'm cutting hairs, but there is a difference between the two of them. Okay, you're still under the influence of not being impaired. Again, impaired means unable to operate a motor vehicle safely.
And then how would they determine whether you're impaired?
You
Is
don't
there
have
any
to, according to this statute, you can't talk and drive at the same time. They're
No.
saying that the passenger, the guy, you cannot do that. Now, it doesn't say that you're going to increase penalties, it just says you probably don't have the protections under this new statute, you understand? So you can't say, apparently, the passengers can use it, if they're less than an ounce, but the driver can't.
Right.
Remember, none of this is going to touch the laws that say that you cannot drive a motor vehicle if you're impaired, whether it's marijuana or alcohol or anything else. And by the way, as an aside, and I don't think anybody here would do anything so stupid, but alcohol and weed don't mix, man. If you use the two of those together and try to drive, forget it. It's dangerous, it's indefensible in the courtroom, in my mind, and it's a big no-no. I don't think you can get away with it. It's a very poor thing to do. Now, the thing about driving and using marijuana, there's been a lot of studies. Marijuana's been studied probably more than any other substance you can imagine, because the government's been very anxious to find things wrong with marijuana, as you know, because there's been this so-called Reefer Madness campaign been going on since 1937 to legalize marijuana, and so there's been a lot of studies. The first one was done by LaGuardia about driving and using marijuana in New York, and I guess it was the late early 50s. And much to everybody's shock, they found that it really didn't impair people's use of marijuana if they were used to using it. And familiar with the effects, it didn't really affect their ability to use marijuana to any degree of any real concern. There's also many studies done in Australia, I understand, that came up with some of the same conclusions. Now, I'll give you an example though. My understanding is that there are certain law enforcement agencies that are arguing that marijuana is dangerous because they have a case where a officer was apparently killed by a guy using marijuana in his car, I think Ventura or something like that. What they didn't say about it, he was also using, I don't know, it was Xanax, or it was some other thing like that, okay, they leave that part out, you know? So it's usually the combination of these things that cause problems. And of course, we don't need problems. We don't want problems. We don't want people driving around screwed up on herb or anything else, right? However, what I think that arguably and hopefully, if you, even though you might legalize it, it doesn't mean that that won't be, it's gonna increase people's idea that they can get away with it. Arguably, it might make them more away. They spend some more dollars instead of imprisoning people on education, telling people the effects of impairment, so that every kid that gets out of school knows if I can't touch my nose, I can't walk a line, I know that I can't drive a vehicle. But unfortunately, we don't, our society, the way we're dealing with crime, is the idea is bust some poor kid that's in a car with his homeboy that makes, shoots out the window, put him in prison for 35 years, and let it dribble down to the other kids that you can't do that. My thinking is, if we spend 1/10 of 1% on educating those kids in high school with basic criminal law concepts and punishment, we'd be spending our money more wisely. That's why I'm involved with that Constitutional Rights Foundation. I did it many years ago, admittedly, but that's what it's about, educating youngsters about the consequences of criminal law.
And just to follow up though, suppose even today you were to smoke and drive, how would, I mean, with obviously with alcohol you have the blood alcohol content, but how would they verify whether you smoked? How is that measurable in any way?
Well, in my guide, I talk about driving and using marijuana and the law regarding. Well, they can test the THC content.
Oh.
Okay. However, they can do blood tests or they can do a urine test. But with a urine test, usually they test what's called metabolite, which is to show that it was used. And the metabolite doesn't show whether you're impaired or not. So it's a difficult thing for the prosecution to be able to prove impairment for use of marijuana. They have to usually have a peg, like erratic driving means extreme, or some kind of, speeding out of control, or something that enforces the idea that they were impaired at the time they were driving. And so, and there are no set standards about how much THC is either in your blood or how much metabolite in your urine that constitutes impairment. Unlike in the law under alcohol, it's 0.8 or above blood alcohol content. Automatically that's a crime. We don't have that. However, I will tell you, I think Utah or somewhere in those states out there, they passed a law that said any amount of metabolite or otherwise is a crime to drive with. So that means a guy could have smoked in Amsterdam 30 days earlier on vacation, come home, driving his car, gets pulled over, has metabolite in the system, he's guilty of DUI, So I hope that answers you, because in my guide I tell you about DUI and marijuana, and you can read what it says about that, and it gives some explanation about those issues.
Okay.
Yes?
If this proposition were to pass,
Yeah.
would the people of California be nullifying federal marijuana laws? And my second question is, do you think that the Constitution allows the federal government to regulate marijuana? Do you agree with the 2003 Supreme Court decision, Gonzalez versus Reich? Which says that a woman who was growing marijuana in her backyard in California for personal use, that constituted commerce under the Commerce Clause allowing. So do you believe that the Commerce Clause allows the federal government to regulate marijuana?
Well, let me tell you, it does, unfortunately. I didn't make that ruling, but they ruled in Gonzalez versus Rage. Angel Rage brought a lawsuit trying to actually restrain the government from taking her couple of plants that she was going for a medical petition. And the court held that because they can't tell the difference between legal marijuana and illegal marijuana, it would affect the interstate commerce of marijuana, and it's a stretch, obviously, and therefore they said if it affects interstate commerce in any way, stretch, or form, it can be controlled by the federal government. Do I agree with that? No. There's other problems in the race cases that she tried to enjoin police department. You can't, it's very hard to enjoin future acts in the law, you can't really do that, so that was another part of it. Do I agree now? Your number one question, is this going to nullify or in some way the federal government law? No. But Angel versus Race also said a very important thing, Race versus Gonzalez versus Wade, is that